Hi guys, my name is Sophia, I'm a care leaver, and welcome to my Care Leaver Sophia channel. First of all, thank you so much because this week we hit 100 subscribers, which is crazy and awesome, and thank you so much to the Care Experience Twitter community especially for all your help in getting me here. We're now officially at the YouTube channel Care Leaver Sophia, and you can find that in our official URL. It's all very exciting. Fun news from me, I am back from Asia this week, which is why I look a bit more tanned than usual and a bit more mosquito bitten. I've been away with my master's programme as part of my course, but now I am on the Easter break, and so I'm doing lots of revision for my exams in like 3 weeks or 2 weeks. But I'm also applying for grad jobs, so jobs that I will start after I hopefully graduate in August of this year. Having done all of these recent applications, I thought this would be a really great opportunity to talk about job applications and especially how to go about getting all the material you need to apply for jobs whilst you are in foster care. So this is something I've said before in my other videos. I think having a job whilst you're in care is really, really important because it teaches you a ton of different skills. It helps you become more independent, it helps you begin to learn about money management, and it helps you transition into becoming an adult. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I got my first job and what sort of materials I needed to go seek out and find before I could start applying. I'm also going to talk a bit about jobs that I've applied to since leaving the foster care system and becoming a care leaver. So let's jump right in. My first ever job was a Lego brick at Legoland. Okay, as crazy as this might sound, I'm not lying and this isn't a joke. So I was 17 years old and my first ever job was working at Legoland in Windsor. And the official title of the position was Entertainment's Assistant. And this essentially meant that I got to dress up in lots of different costumes, like a Lego brick or a princess or a pirate or the Lego movie characters. And I'd go around this theme park and I'd chat to kids. And I'd also take part in shows that were going on across the park. And I'd also sometimes make balloon animals. To be fair, it was a really cool first job. The path to getting this first job though was a bit harder than you might imagine. So like so many other kids in the foster care system, I was missing a lot of really important documents when I went into the system. So I didn't have a passport, I didn't have a birth certificate, and I didn't have a national insurance number. And as I'm sure you guys know, when you're applying for a job, you really need those three to kind of, prove your own identity. And obviously because I was under 18, I didn't have anything like a driver's license or anything to prove who I was. So I literally could have been anyone. This was like the perfect opportunity to create a secret identity, and I'm kind of upset I didn't. So I'm going to include some links down in the description about how you can access your birth certificate and your national insurance number if you don't already have one. Also, there'll be a link for how to apply for a passport. Of course, you can't get any of these documents without having your birth certificate first because you have to, prove who you are. It was a bit more difficult for me because I wasn't born in England, I was born in Sweden. And I remember looking up online, how to find my birth certificate. The UK are really quite good. They have a government website and it's super easily accessible, and you can apply and find your birth certificate. My problem was, I didn't live in Sweden, I lived over here, and I didn't know who to talk to about finding my birth certificate. So I did probably the most Gen Z thing I could, and I tweeted the Swedish embassy on Twitter. I tweeted the Swedish embassy and I was like, hey, I was born in Sweden, but I live in England now. How can I access my birth certificate? Luckily, whoever was running the Swedish embassy's Twitter account were super great, and they DM'd me and they were like, cool, email this email address. And this started like a whole chain of events where I was so lucky I ended up not having to pay for my birth certificate at all. Secondly, I applied for a passport. I did actually have a passport growing up, but I didn't have access to it anymore because obviously when you go into care, you don't really think to take all your stuff with you. You very much have like your plastic bag full of what you can. And so I didn't have a passport, and so the easiest thing I could do was I reapplied for a British passport, and I said that my last one got lost. You have to fill in a few questions to make sure you're not just like joking and trying to get a second passport, and you do have to pay for it, but it is worth it because having a passport is so essential to a lot of stuff in the UK when you're applying for things, and also especially when you're getting jobs. So at the age of 16, I'd applied for my birth certificate and I got that. I reapplied for a passport and I was almost all set to go, and I then just had to reapply for my national insurance number. But if you go onto the website that I've linked below in the description, you can go on there and you can register and they will provide you with your national insurance number. So when I applied for my first job, my CV looked kind of blank, but because I had done a lot of music stuff, I kind of filled my CV up with that and pushed the whole, oh, you know, I'm good at teamwork because I've played in an orchestra. And you can twist this for all sorts of things. Like, for example, if you played netball at school, or if you played football, you can be like, oh, I'm a really good team player because I helped my team last year win at sports day. I don't know, like, if you're young and still at school, or like you've just left school, you can definitely take extracurriculars or even just school stuff and turn it into work experience. CV wise as well, when employers are hiring new, less work experience people, so for example 16 and 17 year olds, one thing that I sort of promoted on my CV was my volunteering work. This doesn't have to be, you know, like you've gone and you've helped kids in Africa. It can very much be like, hey, I volunteered on my school's open day and I gave some tours to parents. So now that you've got all your documents and a CV, you need to usually write a covering letter depending on what the job is. This is where you can talk more about your accomplishments, like you can talk about if you've done well at school, or perhaps if you've received an award for something. When I first started applying for jobs, I would often go online and look at sample covering letters, and I wouldn't copy them. Like, that's super important to say, don't copy stuff online. But I would look at them and I'd be like, oh, this is a really good idea. This guy talks about being hardworking, and then he gives an example. And I was like, oh, I can talk about that. I can talk about being hardworking because I got this many GCSEs and at these grades. If you can find at least like 3 good points to make, all with examples to back them up, employers will love that and they'll probably pay more attention to your covering letter and CV. So after submitting all the documents you now have, plus your CV and your cover letter, hopefully you will get a job interview. Now, with job interviews for looking at jobs for mainly 16 and 17 year olds, there's usually either a one-to-one interview or it's something called a assessment centre. An assessment centre I have experienced in lots of different forms, but the group sort of definition is you have a group of people who have all applied for the same job and have gotten through to the interview stage, and you will be interviewed together. And these jobs are usually for, you know, teamwork roles. So my first ever job at Legoland, I had a group interview with about 12 other people. And I think my interview specifically, it was a way of seeing how we placed against each other whilst also seeing how we worked in teams. When they split you into groups, they'll often come round and see how people are interacting with each other. And so my top tip for work assessments and things is, if you're on a work assessment and they ask for someone to volunteer to go first, always put your hand up. Even if you're super nervous, you get so many brownie points for going first. It shows that you're not afraid to put yourself out there, and it shows the interviewer that you want to be there and you're enthusiastic about the possibility of this job. Another really important thing with job interviews, both in interviews one-to-one and group interviews, is be smiley. If you look like you're not bothered to be there, then they're not going to hire you. Hopefully you've applied to this job because you're actually interested in some part of the role, and share that enthusiasm with the interviewer. You know, smile, tell them why you think this job's really cool, let them know a bit about yourself and be enthusiastic about yourself, because in these job interviews you are very much selling yourself. Confidence goes a long way in selling yourself. Even if you don't fully believe in yourself, pretend you do. Even if you think you have absolutely no chance of getting this job, sit there like you do. I have applied to some crazy jobs which are way over my experience level, but I've ended up getting them because I've presented myself in a way that says, I can do this role. I might not have all the experience, but I'm a fast learner, I'm happy, I'm confident, and I put my hand up first. My last tip for interviews is be polite. This goes without saying, but a please and a thank you does go a long way in an interview, and a good handshake. Something I can't stand, being at business school, I do tend to shake people's hands quite a lot, and I can't stand limp handshakes. I think it says so much about a person, and it can really ruin the image of a person in my mind if they give me a weak handshake even before they start talking. I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but when you're in a job interview, this kind of doesn't ring true. You've got to present your best self. Your job wear doesn't have to be extremely formal, but it would be good if you could try and purchase something that you can use just for job interviews. Social services almost always has this fund for people who are applying to jobs, not just in foster care, but also care leavers. So yeah, hopefully your interview went great if you followed the rules of confidence, positive attitude, and presentability, including a good handshake. If all goes well and you've presented your documents and you've had a successful interview, you will be invited to start the job. So for the last 5 years, I've worked every single school holiday there is. I'm going to link in the description a couple of student job sites which I really liked when I was a teenager, and they provide all sorts of crazy jobs like to do during the summer and winter holidays. For those of you who have left the foster care system and are care leavers or just older care experienced people, I want to talk a bit about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social media website which is primarily focused on work and getting jobs, and also just promoting yourself whilst in a job. So on LinkedIn you can connect to other working professionals. I'm connected to some quite big managers and bosses of companies I like, because I like to ask questions about how they got into the role. My favourite feature of LinkedIn right now though is the job section, and if you start filling out your profile and also just searching things you're into, LinkedIn will come up with job searches that they think you will be interested in. They also have an easy apply button, so if you have your CV uploaded, all you have to do is click easy apply and it will send off your information to the company. So quick recap, get your documents, make sure you have your birth certificate, passport and national insurance number. Write a kick-ass CV and cover letter. Look into perhaps doing work experience before applying to your first job. This can also include internships. Finally, in your job interview, always remember to be confident, to smile, and most importantly, be polite. Hopefully with all this information, you'll feel a bit more confident about applying to jobs, and I hope that I feel more confident in applying to jobs over the next few weeks. Let you know how I get on, as long as you guys let me know how you get on if you are applying for jobs in the near future. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Sophia Hall Sachs, and you can also send me an email at careleaversophia@yahoo.com. But for now, happy job hunting, and I will see you in 2 weeks.